To explore the possible role of DNA in enabling the human species to connect telepathically with one another and with the universe at large, this is Neon Galactic, a podcast produced by PBS affiliate Key TV in Northern California. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. The world has been riveted these past several months with the work of Kai Dickens and her exploration of telepathy among nonverbal autistic kids on the podcast The Telepathy Tapes. She's been on this show, and later this month we'll interview Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, a scientist who has been working over many years to confirm this phenomenon. Our guest today, Dr. Max Rempel, has also been working on the mechanisms behind such phenomena and has come to some very interesting conclusions around the role played by DNA in allowing for such a reality. How connected are we as a species to the universe that gives us life? How connected are we to one another? How do we as lay people parse the truth of these claims in an era when so much of the world is beset by disinformation and wishful thinking? What constitutes proof of such claims? And if they are ever proven, how will such a reality transform our relationship with the world and one another? I'm excited to explore these questions and others with someone who has been working for years to challenge old paradigms, while at the same time demanding he and others stay within the bounds of scientific rigor and hard evidence. Thanks for joining us, Max.
Wow, thank you for introduction. Thanks, James. Hello, everybody.
So,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's start with who you are and what's your educational background, just so people can orient themselves around your expertise and figure out who we're hearing from today.
Right. Just before we go on the biography and stuff, I know you're supposed to establish yourself and then do a sales pitch, but I want to, for those who's watching for 1 minute, I want to say that I now accept the samples from alien abductees for free. I mean, you analyze your DNA, you send me your data, and I will look at the potential alien editing traces of gene manipulation, genetic manipulation by the extraterrestrials. And I will give you lots more during the presentation, during the interview.
Okay.
So about myself, I'm a Jew from Russia. I'm 61 now, and I left Russia when I was 32 in 1996. And since then, I'm in the United States, and I work there as a molecular biologist and on DNA. I did my the main university in Russia called Lomonosov State. I did my master's on DNA synthesis, organic chemistry, and trained as a chemist. I did in Institute of Molecular Biology and later in Institute of Gene Biology. I did my PhD on DNA extraction, but I did also training on molecular biology. And here I worked mostly in DNA analysis, genotyping. Most famous of my, I was like always a small fish in a big pond, small fish. So somewhere in the middle of the list of the authors, but most cited publication is the schizophrenia locus, basically a set of schizophrenia gene disbinding was discovered by the group, first published by the group where I worked. My responsibility was to manage robots back in 96, 98. So the robots, actually, they're still around, just very basic pipetting, like go back and forth, one hand, and program all the automation, all the devices, and we did tons of, like thousands of people genotype back then. And since then, I did much of DNA analysis. Then I moved. I don't know, something moved me. It's I'm a big loser in mainstream science, so I've been fired. I look for a new job. I worked there for years, and I get fired again. So I'm not very successful. And then I worked on a little bit with patients, like analyzing stuff. Just watch them basically. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a PhD doctor, which is natural sciences. Yeah. Then we did mice, lots of mice. I hated work with mice because you have to. I had to stress them. It's hard to stress mice, but I had to stress them. Hundreds of mice, and again, DNA analysis, RNA analysis, and then I finally was able to work a little bit on light therapy, which was cool, laser therapy, light therapy. And then I was back and forth independent, lost my ground, and I went back hired, then again independent. I got some of NIH grants as a small business, so I got total, I think five grants of them. Three were pretty decent, so under $1 million, but spread over the years was it's little. But I
Yeah.
had some independence, and that allowed me to move fully. So since 1999, I got that idea. I was actually given the idea; it wasn't mine. I visited Russia, and well, someone I barely know, a nice lady, gave me a book and said, like, check it out. And that defined my work since then, 99 to 25, 26 years. It's about DNA resonance and holographic code of the genome. So 2001 introduced to Reiki, 2008 became Reiki master. Reiki is a hands-on healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
2009 I was researching fields myself at home, researching the fields and literature, and read a book which is great, The Field by Lynn McTaggart. Terrific book,
Yeah.
still very good.
I've read
I
it. Yeah. Yeah.
closed the book February 9th, day after my birthday, closed the book, and very illogically, I mean, it was just like, if that is true, which I think it is true, that everything is the field, let's check out the aliens. That was like logical jump. Like, let's check out the. Until then, I wasn't into aliens much, and it was half a year of complete dive into the ufology. And I googled. It was Rochester, upstate New York. I googled. I found the ufology interest group with Richard Dolan, led by Cookie Stringfellow. And I came there late, but there was a extraordinary presentation by some experiencer, and then I interviewed that experiencer and published it on YouTube. And then I started my support group for experiencers, basically abductees. So I got lots of stories, and I got my stories. I started looking for channelers, and someone channeled Pleiadians to me, which was great. And then I wrote a book basically trying to figure out and figure it out the way I didn't answer all the questions, but at least the main problem, how is it that we originated from primates here, uh, and also we originated from the aliens? That, it cannot originate from both. You have to be, how do you combine that?
Mhm.
So I wrote the book self-published. I don't think many people read it, but it's still there, explaining and combining the two. Because it's hybridization between extraterrestrial and terrestrial species, but they are related to us. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to hybridize. So I already in 2012 I published about the alien hybridization program. That was the center of the whole story, and read all the accounts by John Mack and others, and telepathy. No, not telepathy. Sorry, the hypnotic regressions of abductees. And 2013, I was given my own channeler, Jim Charles. I immediately started recording. Pretty much the second conversation was recorded, and since then it's all recorded. And 90% of that was published, and 70% of that is published real time. So we just broadcast it. Back then it was before Zoom, so it was Google Meetup,
Mhm.
published 2013, October 1st. And the message from extraterrestrial was that we are nice, we come, we are, it was a group with Yael. You know Yael? Yael are hybrids between humans and greys. Uh, and they're pretty nice. Many of them live in Pleiades, and they are the main closest to us race which does hybridization, but also is nice, and they hope to merge with humanity. Basically, when they allowed, they would land, and that would be one of the first races to actually interact with us because they're compatible with our vibration and the planet. And many of them secretly actually walk among us. So I realized they understand very little about our civilization. It was surprising to meet people through a channeler who have very poor understanding of what we are and why we do things the way we are. So I wrote my next book, Welcome to Earth, and explain. It was a book for the aliens, explaining how we are living in that deception, basically. And at the middle of the book, I came to the understanding that it would be nice if they cannot come here. It would be nice if they took us there, and we basically had a contact, open contact, I guess, secret contact there, open with them. But lots of people would want to go. So we started a project which we called Human Colony. So go to the site humancolony.org, and that was a great excitement. We hope that it will be taken physically, but all ended up with being taken at sleep astrally. So some people remember. I remember vaguely the visits, very vaguely. Some people remember much stronger, but physical contacts were very limited. So in any case, astrally there was a contact with human colony. So there was a lot of Pleiadians, Yael, some reptilians, some Lyrans, Arcturians, and others. And we are still pretty good community now. It's kind of shrank a bit because there is a lot of other channelings. But we were, I guess, the first channeling community which did channeling online, and it was open for people to come just during the seminar and ask questions or even do channeling. So we did training, we did workshops. So check out Human Colony. I abbreviated it to Hucolo, Hucolo, Hucolo. Right. And
I'll put those links in the description so folks can check out your projects and websites.
So, and my main focus in science, since I guess 2008, I was pretty much going on my way to decipher the vibrational code of the genome, the DNA holographic code. And I'm pretty moving far. And I did some pretty nice discoveries, basically 4 discoveries, some of them more solid, and some of them are more like hypothesis discoveries. And the code is starting to make sense, especially now with AI. It's so much easier to look at to do programming and to look at the data. And so I do it like, I found basically I work elsewhere, and then I fund my own research. Until the AI came up, I was hiring some programmers. Now I do it myself with AI. It's just faster and cheaper. Okay. Do you have any questions so far?
I mean, I wonder, Rupert Sheldrake, are you familiar with his work, like morphic
Yeah, and
resonance
he's
and stuff like
familiar with
that?
my work too.
Yeah, I wonder I mean, how would you, is that sort of where you start from in terms of morphic resonance and that sort of stuff, or is it
Yeah.
more
So
separate?
Sheldrake is terrific. All he says is great, except he diminishes the role of DNA. Somehow he still we argue with him much. I mean, we argue with him some about the role of DNA in morphic resonance, because he says there is so much information coming from the outside of the body, then the role of DNA is little small. Like he assigns the role of DNA just to synthesize proteins, and that's it. And my understanding is that in addition to synthesizing proteins, which is a small part of the genome, I did counting, it's 4.5%, which is capable of synthesizing proteins. Not all at once, but 4.5% of the DNA sequence is actually coding for amino acids in the protein. And 95+% is junk DNA, which is doing something else, which I believe is doing the vibrational work. And I have self-published and submitted for publication. Oh, actually, I published a lot before, but recently I submitted two more pieces, big pieces. It's about 100 pages of arguing and demonstrating the theory that DNA is vibrationally bound to the whole body. Essentially, the whole body becomes one united, unified, and integrated vibrational system where DNA is the code nearly in every cell. In most of the cells, we have DNA. And it is responsible for health, for building the structure of the body, and also it's vibration linked to the neuronal vibrations, and it participates, I claim, directly, vibrations of DNA directly participate in thinking. And I explain how it is. And then, in addition, I claim, it's harder to prove, but it makes a lot of sense, that DNA is a portal. It's a converter interface between the physical world and astral world. I mean, there is a lot of other portals like water, proteins, bones, so everything can vibrate. But the difference of DNA is it has a code which is stable for the lifetime. While proteins, DNA survives longer than the body. It's super stable. While the proteins are they're copied from DNA, the code, and then some of the proteins live for 1 day, some live for a month, but it comes and goes. DNA is something which is very stable, and it's also has a pre-tier structure for vibration. It's a double helix, very liquid crystallic, while proteins are much more complex. So yeah, for those who don't know Sheldrake's theory, basically that's the idea of morphic resonance is that's morphic field, which is non-physical, and it has lots of properties. It first is responsible for building the shape of the body. The second, it is responsible for thinking. So field outside of the body who is connected to the body, and lots of thoughts come from outside, essentially. And for learning, so that's the principle of 100th monkey, where when one person learns something, then he teaches other people, and then it becomes part of the field, and that is spread through the field non-locally to the whole civilization, essentially, to the whole humanity. And that you can see very nicely the illustration of that principle, 100th monkey, basically, that when the first AI learns something, then lots of others learn it way faster. Like it takes for OpenAI, it takes lots of months to teach something, and then some others like DeepSeek can reproduce it super fast. Any questions so far? Where should we go now?
Well, yeah, I mean, so you mentioned the word is holographic theory. I'm wondering how holography plays into your ideas. Can you explain that for us in a relatively simple way?
Yep. So it's DNA is we have so the idea that DNA plays holographic role is very old. That it creates a holographic image, essentially the blueprint for the body, for shape of the body. DNA was discovered, the double helix was discovered in 53 in March, and already in 60, I think 62, there was a publication when somebody suggested that DNA plays such a role, and then 69, the idea of quantum genetics was proposed. And 72, the idea of DNA hologram was proposed by Miller and Webb, and Richard Alan Miller is my co-author on many publications. The code of the DNA is linear. It's 6,000, 6 billion letters, and it can fit on 6 GB flash disk. So the code is there, and DNA is a polymer, and if you extract DNA from the body, it would be about 300 grams. It's very physical substance. It's like a polymer. And this linear polymer, the idea is that it creates a three-dimensional blueprint for the body, which is the field. Some of that is physical electromagnetic field, and some of that is acoustic field, and some of that is non-physical, something beyond material, astral ethereal field. And that's the main principle of holography, is that you can record on a 2D photographic plate, you can record a 3D image. So unfolding lower dimensionality to higher dimensionality, from 2D to 3D, or from DNA, which is 1D to 3D, is the principle of holography. One of the properties of holography is that a small part carries the whole image, and that's pretty much true with the biology, where every cell of the body carries the DNA sequence, 6 billion letters. And nowadays it's easy to clone a mammal from a skin cell. They can recreate the whole whatever animal.
Yeah.
So that's the holography principle. And how it does, that's where my contribution is. And basically you have to learn. And nowadays, by the way, everybody has AI, and ChatGPT paid version 4.1 and Claude 4 are terrific, also paid version. And just go and ask, and you will find a lot. You can research, but of course you have to ask in several sessions and ask questions which are opposite, so you get all sides of the story. But it's pretty easy to get the background. But essentially, DNA is very rarely naked in the cells. It's always wrapped around the proteins called histones. DNA is negatively charged, histones are positively charged, and DNA is wrapped around little barrels, which are the shape of a hockey puck, and nearly 2 loops of DNA are wrapped around. And so histones and DNA bind together, creating the substance of chromosomes called chromatin. And it's a known fact, very well known, documented, and it's on videos on YouTube. You can see under microscopy, you can see how chromatin lives and folds and unfolds, folds and unfolds. And after lots of theoretical papers and research, I realized that structure of water plays a huge role there. So we're dealing with a substance in the nucleus of the cell, which is called nucleoplasm. So the chromosomes are there. The material of chromosomes is chromatin, and it constantly folds and unfolds as a liquid crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the essence of life and essence of how the cell thinks. That's my claim, that folding and unfolding happens in a sequence-specific manner. Sequence of DNA controls how it folds and unfolds, and that's how the cell thinks, and it makes a lot of sense. And DNA creates double helix, create a structure of water around itself. That's my claim, hypothesis, where the layers of water are perpendicular to the DNA double helix. And identical sequences, we have a lot of identical sequences called repeats or transposons. That's what I nearly discovered. I need still to prove more, but there is a first indication that transposons stick to each other through water layers. And that's how DNA folds and folds, creating larger structures. And that is a process already known in biology, that there is self polymerization, self assembly of polymers, and self disassembly, dynamic, continuous, perpetual. And I claim that that's where the spiritual astral energy, very weak subtle field, it's called subtle fields, just to indicate that it's not material, immaterial energy, immaterial fields, control random structure building, morphogenesis. Morph is a structure from Greek. So morphogenesis in chromatin, structure building, crystal building is controlled by the fields, by subtle fields. And the other way around, when the structures vibrate, they create sufficient fields to transmit it like to astral ethereal layers. By the way, Dan Winter 20 years ago did wonderful lectures on that. So my contribution is that I show how in sequence-specific manner it happens, and I propose the actual structures of water and how this happens with two double helixes coming close to each other and sticking to each other. I called it homological adhesion, home adhesion. So that's a new claim, self-published, and hopefully will be published soon in collective publications. Is it sufficient?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But there's a couple of questions that come up through that. Um, you posit, I guess, a sort of limited amount of consciousness within each cell. I mean, they're thinking, so that implies that there's some sort of consciousness there. How does that relate to the broader human consciousness? And like you were talking about neuronal processes, is the overall consciousness of, say, one human being, the collective piling up of these sort of elementary consciousness to form the whole thing, or are those separate kinds of processes and separate kinds of awareness and mentality?
All right. So first, let's separate individual consciousness, which is tied to the body somehow and grows with the body, and universal consciousness, which is some sort of nature, God, universal mind. Let's now look in the physical and biological context, how DNA vibrations tie to the brain vibrations, brain oscillations, brain waves.
Mhm.
So I don't refuse or neglect any of the well-established neurobiology. So all neurobiology is fine. Whatever phenomena they discover, including the neuronal firing and neuroplasticity, is cool. Now we need to tie DNA there, and it's not trivial because DNA is inside the nucleus of the cell, of the neuron. And neuron is a bigger, has a cell wall, and then it has branches called axons. And these axons are sticking out and reaching to each other, and that's how neurons communicate. And the place where they talk to each other is called synapses. And synapse is super interesting because lots of drugs are, including lots of drugs, are affecting the brain state, and even altered states are controlled through the synaptic connections, which are chemically monitored. So there is a lot of chemistry which is true. Now, the DNA sits in the nucleus in one neuron and another neuron. How does it vibrationally talk to each other? So it can do it, obviously, through astral field, like non-locally, but also I propose that it talks through physical means, through electromagnetic waves, and most likely through infrared, UV and infrared. UV is characterized by Fritz Albert Pope. Infrared is now becoming more interesting in many ways through the works of Philip Ball. Anyway, so DNA, it looks like the vibrations of DNA are collected in a special crystallic structure called primary cilium on the nucleus wall, on the nuclear wall, cell nuclear wall called primary cilium. And then there are microtubules which attach or come very close to that. They kind of wrap around the nucleus and also they come close to the cilium. Then they go all the way through axons, through the branches to the synapses. And there they enter the synapse and there they stop. And then the microtubules from another neuron also come close. So it looks like the synapse is the vibrational connection between the two. And there is like that synaptic gap, which probably works as a capacitor, electric oscillation capacitor. And microtubules, it looks like they are perfect structures to conduct infrared waves and UV waves. Anurban Badyapadai is the pioneer trying to model those electromagnetic wave propagation through microtubules, and Stuart Hameroff is the one who carries the idea for microtubules being a carrier of information and huge participant in brain mind work in the brain. So essentially, in addition to action potential, which goes through outside of the synapse, it goes like travels from the cell body through the branch. There is inside of the synapse, there are microtubules which possibly work much faster transferring the information. So that's how DNA participates in the brain work in the physical. Now, consciousness, I agree with lots of others, psychic researchers, PSI researchers, which is called psi researchers, that we are in some sort of natural simulation. It's not artificial in terms of aliens created a computer, but it's a natural simulation. And but the simulation is pretty reproducible. So what do we call real? Real means reproducible. Like you can test it, you can poke it. It's so the simulation is pretty reproducible, pretty stable. And as in the movie Matrix, we are diving in the simulation, incarnate in the simulation, and collectively play as in a computer game. So collective multiplayer computer games are perfect analogy how we end up here in the physical body. So then some sort of virtual soul, higher dimensional soul, lands in that simulation, creates the body, and as the body grows, it integrates with the body, and then when the body dies, it disconnects and carries the information back, disconnects basically from this reality. So in this simulation, we have the flow of time, which I think is synthesized biologically. The simulation has its own time, but I think non-living things, like material things which are not living, I think they don't have that pool of time. They kind of exist in all times at once. They don't have to think about what happens next. Like even the river, it exists in all times at once. But the biological things, they have that synthetic property when the focus of attention is sitting in a certain place in time. It remembers, has access to information in the past, but has pretty much blocked access to information in the future. And there is a pool of time, so when you're moved through time. So that, I think, happens through biological processes which are irreversible. And reversible biological processes are some metabolic processes, cellular respiration. So this burning of the fuel, burning of sugars with oxygen, I think that's the most irreversible biological process, and that drives us forward in time. I think DNA also plays a role in that
That's what I was going
synthesis
to ask.
of conscious experience.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, I was going to actually ask you about the DNA role. I mean, you mentioned that it's It sounds like to me, and I may have it wrong, so feel free to correct me, but that it dictates sort of the vibrational speed of the being, and does that dictate which realm it's existing in this reality? I mean, because I know that people talk about different vibrational states can elevate you, or in terms of your consciousness and your you talk about the astral realm and whatnot. That's all related vibrationally to where we're at as individual beings. Is that right, or is that an extrapolation that fails according to your theory?
Thank you. Let me think. So, altered state, right? We get into altered state in meditations using some chemicals or using some electromagnetic devices. And I visited recently the conference called Contact in the Desert.
Yeah.
And Diane Hennessy was speaking there, and she mentioned that using electronic devices, you can block some parts of the brain, kind of inhibit temporarily, so you get into altered states. And essentially, that inhibits your, I think she said right brain. I'm actually blanking. I'm confusing them constantly. The logical brain is inhibited, and then intuitive brain becomes timeless, and you get into the special state. So it's all sort of already. You don't need to invoke the idea of DNA to talk about altered states, right? Uh, why do you need to bring in DNA into thinking and consciousness in altered states? First, some people inherit special abilities. That's huge. Like some families are uh, hereditary witches or priests.
Mhm.
I track my genetics to a big chain of Jewish rabbis in Jewish tradition. Rabbis keep track who is who comes from which line. So I have pretty good my genealogy to Jewish tradition to 10th century, which is super cool. One of the branches. There are many branches, but one of the branches I was able to dig to. So in those, you have that inherited property of getting into altered states, and also culturally in the family, you taught to get into altered states. So genetics of just inheritance is huge. I guess we'll come later to the idea. Oh, we're already like way through the time, right? So additionally, the idea of alien manipulation, I think, comes. So the aliens, I think many of them, many races, they introduce some variations and some edits in the human genome through abductions, and this way they introduce special abilities. So I think I'm pretty confident that autists and alien abductees are pretty much closely overlapping subpopulations. So this is like one of the roles of DNA to program special abilities. And my mind goes into the abduction theory, but let's keep going right now. Let's come back to abductions and hybridization soon. But basically,
Yeah.
you can modify DNA sequence to induce special states, and that's why studies of schizophrenia and some other psychiatric disorders are so well funded, because it's very clear that DNA plays a role there. So DNA creates ability to go into special astral states, and the other way around, to be very grounded. Now, the second reason to think about vibrations and DNA is that it's a code which is everywhere in the organism. And I think the idea of that the organism is integrated, unified, vibrational system is huge. It's inhibited in the mainstream science for many reasons. One of the reasons, I think, because of the weapons and mind control. So the publications on quantum genetics, they have been declassified a few years ago, like because of the 50-year rule,
Mm.
but they were classified right away. So they were closed in the 60s and 70s, and there was clear evidence that some people, authoritative people, came and confiscated. Like Richard Allen Muir tells a story that in 72, after he reported on the conference the idea of DNA holography, he was visited by people who took all his papers and told him not to speak about that anymore. So that was one of the reasons, but other reasons are uh, economical and other reasons. It's just still the control idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, so DNA as a basis of the vibrational system of the body is, I think it's important because it's true. How do you know that DNA plays a huge role in altered states? I would say I will just declare. It's hard to explain it. It comes from less studied. It's not from mainstream science. More like from alternative science. But basically, the body is a coherent system.
Mhm.
DNA is a seed of coherence because it has the same sequence in every cell, primary sequence. A seed of coherence. So from inside out, we shine the coherent state. And then we meet with information from outside, which is discordant, decoherent. And the spiritual growth and spiritual awakening is increasing your inner coherence to such a way that you can go into samadhi, the altered state.
Mhm.
And you can obviously you can build the same system without mentioning DNA. Just talk about the water, proteins, and neurons about coherence. But I believe DNA, because it is a liquid crystal, the one of the most ideal structures in the body. It is the seed for crystallizing everything else, liquid crystallizing. It's a moving crystal, but so my claim is the seed, and also it has a sequence. Everything else, it has a secondary copies of that sequence, but the primary sequence, very stable, is there. So that's a simple logic. And then we can talk about how uh, water structure in the cell becomes more coherent through meditations, diet, and most important, informational diet. If you keep yourself on pure informational diet, you become more coherent. That's, I guess, is a short answer how DNA plays a role.
That's interesting to me. A lot of the science is over my head, but I have had the experience of when I'm reading a lot of material that explores spiritual ideas, I tend to experience the world more. And I mean, like my actual experiences seem to line up in a way that reinforce what I'm reading about, as if the diet somehow impacts how I experience the universe in a very physical way in terms of the unfolding of circumstance. It's I've noticed that in my own life, which sounds sort of like what you're describing there. I noticed that I mean, you are a scientist and you have been publishing and you're still involved in that kind of work. But I mean, mainstream science is allergic to a lot of these ideas.
Mhm.
What do you think it'll take in order for there to be a breakdown of the walls that keep some of these ideas from becoming mainstream? Do you think that that will happen, or do you see the continued work of yourself and others on a parallel track to what sort of the mainstream institutions are doing? Will they ever meet, I guess, is my question. And what needs to happen in order for that to be a reality?
Great, thank you, thank you for. Yeah, this question is indeed gold question, golden. So first thing that happened is AI. Now you don't have to convince mainstream science. My role is just to convince AI. That's huge for me.
Yeah.
Until now, I was trying like to knock on all doors and speak to all the authorities, including authorities in my alternative science. Now I don't have to. I just publish, and I'm sure AI indexes it, and I just take the fresh AI, good one. I mean, there are bad ones like free ones, cheap ones, but DeepSeek R1 is pretty good among free ones. Qwen is pretty good. So um, I feed it and I see its reaction. If I do anonymously, like I go and say like now criticize it, and I see reaction, and usually it is pretty convinced. It still says now to present it to mainstream, you have to circumcise it and castrate it and pretend that we are still materialists. But if you write it up in a proper way, it becomes pretty nice, pretty convincing. So AI is one thing. So now everybody has access to AI. So that is huge. I'm not saying it's, I still see the dark side that everybody will be plugged into one Borg system where with total mind control. To that, I should mention that on this planet we have diversity as a main principle of the planet. It's whenever we get totalitarian system, it births within itself its own destruction. So this planet somehow, the morphic field of the planet creates diversity very nicely, even in most totalitarian systems like all of them. You get diversification which happens, and it eats the system from its side. So I'm pretty hopeful there. Second big event is the hill of the autistic people,
Hmm.
which overlaps with my human colony hill. I think it's the
Real
same type
quick,
of the
for
hill.
people who may not be familiar, the Hill is a place that the kids, the autists, meet up, and it's sort of like in the astral realm that they all commonly visit, and it's sort of this idyllic place where they can go and communicate freely and unhindered. Right? I'm just trying to make that clear for the listeners if they haven't heard about the Hill.
Yep, yep. I was thinking that they do it at will, anytime, but Diane Hennessy said that they do it during the sleep at night. But I guess they can do it all during the meditation during the day. But those autists that just hide themselves under the pillows to meditate, I think they go to the hill. And I'm pretty sure there is that wonderful YouTube channel, which is, it's called Let's Be Telepathy, where B is BEE, like an insect. Let's Be Telepathy. And there you can see how the telepaths, the autistic telepaths, they immediately call friends into the conversation. So one telepath sits in the video screen in a Zoom call online in a live call, and then he connects to others, and others sort of are plugged in telepathically to him. So it's remotely. So that is very real to me. I believe it's real. I had a little bit of experience, enough of the experiments to convince me, telepathic experience. Even with less telepathic people around, I play and we try to send messages, and especially with animals, you can, with dogs, I get them back and forth. I'm worse in listening, better in sending. I'm better in sending telepathic messages. Anyway, so telepathy and autists. I believe these are alien hybrids. So in alien hybridization, obviously there was ancient alien hybridization. Bashar mentions 22 races in the past who contributed to create modern human Homo sapiens, and but there was an acceleration, a recent alien hybridization program, which was started in the 50s with the participation of the military in English-speaking countries. And initially it was the military which were hybridized because they were kind of ordered to cooperate. And then they expanded to civilians. And there was an agreement in which the military received certain technologies from the Greys, and the Greys were permitted to cooperate, the Greys and the Nordics and others, and reptilians. But then that sort of separated into underground, some sort of underground operation. But I believe the hybridization kind of continued to until now. And benevolent races also participated, but they ask for permission. And in my human colony community, physical one, people volunteer for hybridization essentially. Um,
What's the point of this most recent round, would you say?
yeah, great. So that's how the Greys take over the planets. They come to the planet and they have this crisis mentality that their civilization over genetic engineered itself, excessively genetically modified themselves. So their core matrix became broken and they became sick. And then they went transdimensionally to other timelines and started hybridizing themselves into healthy races. And this way they created hybrid races. And this way they take over the planets. So that's sort of wicked way. And they are excessively, no, ultimately non-aggressive. They kind of genetically spliced out all the aggression. So they're very sweet and nice, but they're still secretive. And because of their crisis mentality, they permit themselves things that other civilizations don't permit themselves. So these are the Greys. So the other civilizations, reptilians, Pleiadian, Yael, Arcturian, uh, Andromedans, lots of others, Draconians. I think they create vessels for incarnations on this planet. This planet is super cool. We are center of everything. Lots of civilizations come together here, and lots of galactic stories come together, and everybody, Lyrans, and everybody wants to incarnate here and turn the civilization towards their style of civilization, basically play of the game, and that becomes a competition. Also, angelics and demons, everybody like is competing here. So that's the main purpose is to actually make vessels, and the second purpose is to when we open ourselves to galactic community, relatives will be allowed to land first and socialize first and to actually procreate first. Lots of us would be happy to procreate with aliens. That would be super cool. And I lived through Soviet Union opening up, and lots of foreigners came to us and picked the best mating partners and carried to the West. So lots of people would be happy to travel abroad and become galactic citizens. So that's cool. So that's the second reason is whoever has relatives here is entitled for by galactic rules for the right of the first landing and contact. But also we are overdue for ascension, which is essentially adding another dimension, another ascending in density. So we are pretty much still genetically are capable for higher dimensional living. And we know that humans who visited other higher dimensional planets were pretty easily accommodated to the next density, next dimension. So you don't have to be like, so we are compatible with higher dimension. And whoever, the controllers of the planet, whoever is in charge physically here, they keep the vibrations low so we are to delay our ascension. I think we were ready for ascension several times during the history. One time was around 1900, it was uplifted of civilization. Another time was in Renaissance, another time was during Roman civilization, another time was during Greek civilization. So there were times for ascension, but somehow the planet still stayed low, and now there is a lot of chemistry, electromagnetic pollution, and some and informational pollution. And now everybody will be plugged into the AI, so it will be also held by electronic from ascending. But the aliens they do modifications to make us more compatible and more shift into high vibrations. Most of them.
That's what I was going to ask you is how does the vibrational level and this idea relate to the extraterrestrial races you mentioned? I mean, are they at our same density, or are they higher or lower compared to us, or are we all existing on one wavelength and the next wavelength would have a different set of inhabitants?
They're all over the place. Some are already non-physical, some are barely physical. Pleiadians are pretty much the next one, which we usually call fourth density. If we are in the third density, then the fourth density. There are many reptilians are in the fourth density, Lyrans in the fourth. There are some aliens which are in the third in our density, so they just have technologies to travel, basically to jump. It's never flying, it's jumping through portals.
Yeah.
So they're all over the place. Our density, next one, next one, next one, and after that, it's more like spirits rather than physicals.
Okay.
So what's
Now,
the question? How do they do that? I believe it's in the non-coding part of DNA. They modify the repetitive parts to become more coherent, so we can hold the higher vibrations. Yeah, when I come in the presence of highly vibrational people, I just become sick. So when the aliens
hmm,
came, I was awake. I didn't see anyone, but I felt the vibration, and it was sort of wicked. It didn't feel good, but I just kind of was committed. Said, if I invited them, let's tolerate it. And another time we were like there was C5 star watching inviting aliens. So that was pretty bad. That's their vibration. I don't know what came, but I was barely holding it. It was mostly the belly was so their vibration. So they come like different aliens come in different vibrations. Some of them is really hard to hold, and some of them I think are pretty good. Some of them are pretty happy. So I think it really depends. I think Yael are so close to us, we will be pretty happy in their vibrations.
yeah. I wonder what is the long-term fate of humanity when you have all of these various races competing and affecting us in different ways for different purposes? What's to your mind, the best path forward for us to kind of preserve our own integrity while also eventually matriculating in this broader system? I mean, how do we protect ourselves while at the same time engaging?
Thank you. Your questions are so wonderful. Yes. First is literacy. I know my people are mostly literate. Lots of my friend light workers, new agers. Unfortunately, they don't they are more like in the meditation state rather than in science. But I think you have to know both. You have to be. Many of us have the capacity and have to be literate both in science and spirituality, like New Age spirituality. And with AI, it's now so easy. You can ask any question and become literate very fast. So, and now we can do it by speaking and listening. So I encourage everyone to just become literate in things. So the next thing I think is literacy in alien hybridization. So that's my presentation, which how
Yeah,
much
we
time
can.
do you want to keep going today?
I was thinking another 20 minutes if you want to go through that
Yeah, I think I
presentation.
will go through the presentation and it's like just few slides, but
Okay.
I analyze the traces of genetic manipulation by the aliens and humans.
Okay.
So let me finish answering to your question.
Yeah.
I think the literacy in vibrational biology, I think would be great because you would just understand um, how telepathy works, and then you would understand how DNA sequence is manipulated and what is the it's the fight essentially is for the evolution for the next step. So we are at the crossroads. We can choose tons of roads, and some of them are very dark, some of them are very light, some of them are intermediate, and possibly we will split into multiple servers. Our simulated reality might split into lower server and higher server, but for some period, I think there will be a possibility to jump back and forth. So people, based on their vibration, will switch between different timelines. But then I think the timelines will split, and one Earth will be on the darker side, reptilian type of hierarchical totalitarian system, and another will be on the Pleiadian, Lyran, Yael side, going into lighter Arcturian, lighter vibrations, like more natural, I would say. But there are many choices to be made there. So when we are making choices, essentially, aliens at the moment are negotiating with the governments, and the people will have to choose who they allow in. That's like our choice. That's like we are guided to make that choice and being literate who we like Zetas, reptilians, Orions, because they come with the gifts. So some come with the gifts, and some come with the spiritual lessons. And what do we choose? We choose telepathy and spiritual lessons, or we choose weapons
Technology.
and telepathic helmets and mind control. So that's the main choice.
Yeah.
And I know that the majority will choose immediate financial gain. I'm also tempted. I mean, it's hard to choose between life and death. You probably would choose life and prosperity. So, especially like if you, I think you will be paid to plug into the network, to the like helmets you put on the helmet. You've been paid for being part of the Borg.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe you can be part of the Borg like part of the day, and then you go plug into the natural part of the New Age hippies, and then sort of kind of work on both ways. But I mean, that's a choice essentially, hippies or Borg. Um, Now, that birth of the new human race was predicted by Blavatsky. So there were 5 root races by Blavatsky. Hyperboreans, Polarians, Hyperboreans, Lemurians, Atlanteans with elongated heads and skulls, and Homo sapiens. The next one, we don't have a name yet, but Bashar calls it Homo galacticus. So the humans which came out into the galaxy, Galactic Federation, or whatever galactic community. So that is happening. So these new autists, I believe, are this transition to the new race. I hope that it is a new race, but I posted in some forums, and somebody said that according to that and that, the true representatives of the new race will be born in a couple of years. So I'm puzzled. I wonder if autists are intermediate stage, what is the next stage? And so autists are telepathic, but physically, what's that word? Disabled, physically disabled. They have real trouble physically being in this body, in this physical reality. So they need assistance. And obviously, I would think that the next modification should be both telepathic, psychic on one hand, and physically adept on the other hand. It's kind of obvious. And they can be, I think they can be of any of human races. You can kind of tweak some of the triggers. And so that's what we're witnessing. So I'm in San Diego, California, and I was hoping that if I announced to everyone, like, guys, I want to meet with you, like let's hang together. So far, I wasn't able to find local people who are telepathic and willing to meet me. Maybe a too low vibration for them. Yeah, that frequently happens. I'm too much of the old world, but I want to be with them. I want them to teach me telepathy. They can teach telepathy. So I'm learning telepathy from animals, but I want local telepaths to teach me or remote. I'm open. If you guys telepaths want to teach me, I would be happy to practice. Okay, so now coming to the what
Presentation.
time do you want to finish?
Like 11:30, if possible.
Okay, so all right. So what I did is I started the project a year ago with a hired programmer who doesn't want to disclose his name because he is in the mainstream yet so far. But recently I revived the project with my own. I do does the programming. I do that with Claude 4.0, and then I run it on local Windows system with Anaconda, Jupyter Notebook, Python code, and I do all proper controls. So I'm pretty confident that it's not an error because we do like small steps in the time with all proper controls. So most likely it is true, but it's just the first pass or second pass. I didn't do a lot, but what I discovered looks like traces of alien manipulation. Obviously, if I had alien DNA sequence, it would be so easier if they just insert the sequence, I would see it. I know the secret controllers, secret organization, they have alien genome sequence, but we don't. Like the mainstream doesn't have it. If anybody has alien DNA, I would appreciate it's just a grape seed size of the material would be enough to sequence. I would fund that. It's pretty affordable. Maybe $1,000 I would invest into sequencing alien genome. Um, so we don't have I don't have alien sequence, but what I do have is public human sequences and private human sequences from volunteers. Not many, but a few volunteers. And the scenario, which I know pretty sure, like from a lot of witnesses who underwent that, and some of my own experiences from close people, that how hybridization happened in the past, like in the 80s, how it happened. They would abduct both parents, take the sperm, semen, take the egg from the female, genetically manipulate, return the parents, so the parents come back, they feel violated and manipulated surgically. It's pretty painful. They were butchers. The initial manipulators were pretty sloppy in quality of their work. Now many of them are much better, but in the initial it was sloppy. And then they would grow the fetus there, but then they would impregnate the fetus back into the original mother, and it would be born here with manipulated DNA, but not knowing that they are hybrid. So usually, this family is a stepwise multiple hybridization in the family line. So, and the fetuses, the hybrid children, which are now adults, also have the history of abduction, so they are being monitored and trained and so on. Some of them are consciously trained, some of them are unconsciously, and it can be recovered in hypnotic regressions. And in San Diego, we have Barbara Lamb, who is well known for her hypnotic regressions of alien abductions, and wrote lots of books. So, if two parents and a child had that procedure, then logically, as a geneticist, I can say that we should expect some anomalies. In normal genetics, classical genetics, the child only has sequences from both parents. Each parent, like we have most of the chromosomes called autosomal chromosomes, they are come in pairs. So the child always has a chromosome from one parent, from mother, one from the father. A pair, chromosome number one, a pair, chromosome number two pair. It's not two double helical chromosomes.
Mhm.
So the variants come only from the mother and the father. And if aliens did some editing, then logically you would expect some variants which come from neither of the parents. I call it non-parental variants, non-parental alleles, non-parental mutations, non-parental haplotypes, but essentially non-parental modifications. So I will show you. So that's a self-published paper. I submitted it somewhere to be published. I'm not sure if they will publish it, but that's a self-published paper. Can you see it?
I can, but it's a little off center. I can't see the
Weird.
first part. It
Oh,
says,
right. I understand now. Okay, let me
yeah.
try. Okay, it should be better now, I guess.
Yes, but maybe if you can widen it a little bit, it says preliminary
All right,
evidence of
you're
traces of.
yeah,
There you go. Yeah, there it
okay.
is.
So um, you can find that. Actually, you can find it here. Just a second on here. So no, on here. So these are my contacts. xg1.org. Very easy to write down, find. So the paper is there, and there is a whole story there. DNA resonance is all my publications of full text and video presentations about DNA resonance, including that. It's all
Okay.
included there. Max Rempel is another to find, and my email and my phone number, WhatsApp and Telegram, I'm pretty accessible these days. Okay, so coming back to the thing. So what I did, I took 581 complete families, trios, from Public Genome Project. It's all open access. And I looked for non-parental contributions just because of the time constraints. I just was finished 9 days ago, so that was written
No.
9 days ago. 77 megabases, which are 2% of the human genome on chromosome 3. Out of that number of families, I identified 11 families which contain large fragments of DNA sequence in children which matched neither of human parents. That's pretty much the finding. And that's pretty confident. Let me show you some pictures. So the significance is huge, blah, blah, blah. Lots of history of that, which I just kind of outlined. How I did it computationally, methods, blah, blah, blah. The program is available open source publicly. You can run it, but it's so simplistic. AI could write it very easily. Genotyping, it was already published. It was sequenced pretty reliably. Um, blah, 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 blah. Results. So that's the main results. Um, can you see it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
normal families have everything perfect. So very few non-parental, which can be ascribed to just random errors or random mutations, either technical errors or mutations, natural mutations, but random. So they have very good 98% of everything good, everything is perfect. That number of families, it's called Mendelized. They follow traditional uh, hybridization patterns. Possible hybrids have larger number of non-parental alleles. It's called like variants are called alleles in genetics. So, and that's very significant, blah, 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 because of it's not single, it stretches of multiple. And definite hybrids for individuals where they have a stretch with 20 stretch multiple in a piece, substituted for family, for trios, for individuals. There's a identifiers, so anybody can go double check. It's all public data. And I didn't do the whole genome. I will do it soon, but not yet. Next week or two. So, and what's significant scientifically is that you get a peak which is very sharp. It's like you get a stretch and everything else looks perfect, but you get a stretch which was manipulated. And you can probably ascribe it to some sort of genetic anomaly, like natural genetic anomaly. But there was something else which I don't think I have it as a picture. And the controls have normal, and here we
Yeah.
have like a peak of multiple. And the biggest one was where 206 in a row of the non-parental alleles, which was huge. So that cannot be by chance.
Real quick,
I
I mean,
don't
just
go
a
ahead.
question. If it's, I mean, if the parents aren't correctly identified, that wouldn't explain this, right? I
No,
mean, like
no, the
if it was,
parents, I took the whole database and I took only the trios where the parents genetically I can see that they both parents are real.
okay,
Based on the whole genome, like
like most of the
90,
DNA matches.
98% is divided by two parents, 90, whatever, like nearly 50% each parent contributed. I only took the ones which were correctly identified.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, there were like some which missed parents or blah, 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 but I took only the correctly identified family. So that is certainly not an explanation. So, and that's how the peaks look. And this is the biggest peak, blah, blah, blah. And what is most significant, I didn't draw it. I'll have to draw it for you right now. So essentially, what was striking in this one individual was that one chromosome is double-stranded DNA, and another chromosome is it's a pair of chromosome. One is mother's chromosome, one is father's.
mm,
And the substitution of these 206 markers was done in both chromosomes in the same position. That
interesting.
is pretty much impossible to produce by chance because they will be like in different positions.
Yeah.
And biology doesn't know how that can happen naturally. And now with the technology of CRISPR, we can do that. Basically, what you do the first position, you sort of substitute, multiply the cells, select the ones which have the proper substitution, and then do the second one and select the cell. And the efficiency of CRISPR at human technology is, I think, around 5%, but it's certainly not 100%. So you would have to fish first that and then fish the second. I don't know how the aliens would do that. Maybe they have super efficient technology to substitute in both positions. But this is the biggest proof for me that it's substituted in both chromosomes. And so that was the first analysis. And the second analysis I extended after I self-published. So I did seven volunteers from three families. Essentially, some families had multiple children. So again, I always analyze both parents and one or more children. And so these are seven children, each of them having two parents analyzed.
Okay.
And uh, first, the number of abnormal alleles, non-parental alleles. So I say these are already outliers. These actually these two outliers. One has tons more, 35. But these I genotyped some of them using 23andMe, and some of them are, I don't know what was genotype, but they published their genotype. So some of them, so the density of genotypes are much lower than on the previous picture because it's I think about 50 times, 100 times lower density. So I get much fewer findings, but still. And these are, again, substitutions in both chromosomes, these guys.
So
Two
of the seven children, two of them, is that
had,
right?
yeah, two of them.
Yeah.
One had two substitutions, and one of them had three substitutions, which are in both chromosomes, which is, again, very highly statistically significant. And that's just a summary, total number. And so 2 out of 8 is statistically super unusual. Like it should be, if it is a random mutation, it should be like 1 in 10,000 or something. So if you square it, you would have much fewer. So that high percentage of double chromosome substitution is very statistically significant. And that's about it. That's all I found.
Do you know what the in that particular thing that was substituted, what that's responsible for in terms of the person, like genetically?
You ask super nice questions, and that would be one of the next steps to. So
Identify, probably.
one of
Yeah.
the next steps to look at exactly what is affected. I would assume it's some brain genes. I would think, or promoters like near brain genes.
Mhm.
I know in one of the biggest no one of the okay one of the ones I showed you, it was lots of substitutions in immune HLA region, which is also related to thinking, but also to immunity. So that's all I know so far. So I have to look at that.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm glad you did. This is a really important conversation. And keep up the work and keep us updated. I'd love to have you back at some point to talk about it some more.
Just one more announcement. So I at the moment I would analyze your samples for free
Mhm.
just to build up the database. So if anybody wants to submit your samples for analysis, here are my contacts. Uh,
Okay.
and you can find me on xg1.org and just Google Max Rempel DNA resonance. Okay, and so I always need two parents and at least one child. For since 23andMe has some instability. They had some organizational troubles. I would switch to any other competitor, which is my preference would be MyHeritage. And right now they have the sale. You have to pay for your genotypes, but the genotyping is on the sale. You order the kit for $40. The kit arrives, you spit in the tube, it's just spit in the saliva. Close the tube, there is like some solution there already.
Mhm.
You shake, mail it back to MyHeritage. Give me a copy of your kit, picture of your kit. I will log in, download the data, and analyze it for you and tell you if you have non-parental insertions. And once I build the database, if I learn from you like you're aligned with this, have experience with this kind of aliens, I might tell more. Like if these guys are Pleiadians and these guys are reptilians, that would allow me to tell more. And the cheap genotyping service again, like right now it's $40, gives me like pre-screen. But once I find some outlier, like with a lot of modifications, I should be able to do the full genome sequencing for about maybe between $500 and $1,000. Maybe I can afford paying for some of that. So that again, I need to sequence all three of the members. So and then the ideal sequencing costs even more because you can do long read sequencings for about 2,000 per person, so it's like 6,000 for three people. But then we can look deeper into the non-coding part of the genome. Um, so I keep all the information reasonably private. If you want full privacy, so right now I keep the identifiers in one place and the data in another place, and I will password protect the identifier file. But if you want to participate and be completely private, you can have your friend contact me, and then that would be another layer of protection. So somebody would just submit me. I don't really care who you are as long as I get the data. And you will get, basically through intermediary, you can get all the information.
Awesome, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, James.